The Maternity and Midwifery Forum brings you Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. All your CPD and revalidation needs met in one place. Our expertly curated box sets are the perfect way to engage with the latest thinking, issue by issue. They make revalidation easy and are the perfect accompaniment to any project or university coursework. In addition to video from expert speakers across maternity and midwifery, there is easily accessible research and links to the latest government policy documents. Our reflective questions at the end are the perfect primer for your revalidation. In the same way the Maternity and Midwifery Forum provides certificates to show that you have attended these festivals, we can provide certificates for those who have consumed the content of a box set and submitted their written answers to the reflective questions provided by our curator, Dr. Jenny Hall. Midwives, maternity professionals and students, do not miss out. Subscribe to Matflix today. Box sets are £17.50 each, or access to them all starts at £6.99 per month. Students pay just £2.99 a month. Check out the box sets and subscribe today at www.matflix.co.uk.
Good evening and welcome to the Maternity and Midwifery Hour, brought to you once a week by the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. And this podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify and all podcast players. It's supported by Matflix and video streaming from maternity experts. So all your CPD needs made easy. If you need to do your revalidation or help your student with a project, this is the place to go. It's a one-stop shop. Anyway, my name is Sue Macdonald. I'm the curator of the Maternity and Midwifery Forums, the Midwifery Festivals, and I also co-edit the May's Midwifery textbook. And I'm joined this evening by two wonderful guests. It's a really fantastic double act here. Jenny Clarke, who's known as Jenny the Midwife. I always think of Jenny as Jenny the Midwife. And the lovely Sheena Byrom, who's Director for All for Maternity and the Practising Midwife. So welcome. And we'll sort of move fairly straightforwardly on. I need to now go on to show my slides. So forgive the slowness. I hope this will work. Okay. So this evening we're going to be talking about under pressure, midwifery wellbeing. It is a time when we are under pressure as midwives and as midwifery students and as all of the people within the maternity services. And we felt that we needed to give some time to just supporting and giving some information to our colleagues. So, So this is the Midwifery Hour, like the clock. We're going to try and keep into 1 hour. The aim of the session is to provide you with information and support to all of you, and it's all coming through quite well. We're on the Twitter. Any of you Twitterers, you can tweet #Midwifery Hour, and the Twitter account is Midwifery Forum. Okay, now I think it's hard for us to remember, but at the beginning of the year, and it's not very long ago, we were full of excitement and full of happiness. It was the year of the nurse and the midwife, 2020, and it was very celebratory. We were very happy. We wanted to do our best and celebrate being midwives and nurses. But then suddenly came the coronavirus, the COVID-19. Having said that, I'm going to flick back. It's still the year of the nurse and the midwife. And I think what's happening over the last few weeks is nurses and midwives have really shown they can step up to the plate. They can do a huge amount to support parents, patients, families, whatever. I wanted to celebrate still. I think it's still worthy of celebration. It's a shame this looks such a pretty picture, but it's such a horrible virus. So the coronavirus, COVID-19, it's now designated as a pandemic. I know all of you will know about this, and all of you will know how it's impacting on your normal life. So people with any health issues are being shielded for 12 weeks. Everybody else is on lockdown for 3 weeks and staying at home with the exceptions of if they're in a key job, they're allowed to go out to work. You're allowed some exercise during the day, and you're allowed to go out and get some food and your exercise. In the health service, and I think it's at this point I'd like to pay a tribute to the three nurses that have died. I think this is a very sad day. We've lost three nurses, and one was Arima Nasreem and Amy O'Rourke and Thomas Harvey, and I'd like to pay tribute to them and just remember them for a moment, and then their families and friends. It's a very hard time for them, as well as the four doctors who we've also lost recently. Otherwise, many of our health service colleagues are in self-isolation because of family members or themselves being exposed to infection. There have been huge anxieties about personal protective equipment, PPE. We're getting used to a whole new language now as midwives. We know testing has been very limited, and quite a small number of NHS staff have been tested. It was 2,000 yesterday, it might be a few more today. What has been happening is the NHS has been rising magnificently to the challenge and opening up conference centres, stadiums, units, using them for intensive care facilities and care facilities for COVID-19 patients in all the centres in the main cities across the UK. And though that's magnificent, of course, the impact on staff wellbeing is that people are working longer hours, they're having to change their patterns of work, they're having worries about PPE, and they're worrying about their families as well as themselves. I think, especially being midwives, I think it's more common for us to worry about other people before ourselves, which is part of the purpose of tonight. And of course, the impact on maternity specifically is there is sickness amongst midwives and other maternity staff. There are limited activities going on within maternity. Women are being encouraged to seek other ways of getting their antenatal care and postnatal care rather than coming into the hospital or attending clinics. Some services are limiting visitors. There has been some talk about midwifery-led units closing, and some question about using home birth facilities because of the difficulty of transferring women to the acute unit should they need care. And obviously, the huge thing is the anxiety in women and worry for women, families. I'm not sure the babies have the anxiety and worry, but I guess they might pick up from their mums when they're concerned. And of course, again, anxiety and worry for midwives and student midwives also. Now, I did find these new Ppe Guidelines, and these are the midwifery-specific guidelines. These came out yesterday. It's worth reading the document, and we've got that in the resources page. And I found this, it's like learning a new language. And I'm sure people who are working with this day in, day out are getting very used to it, but it is another language. And sometimes when you're very busy, it's even easier to use a nice, simple table to see what you should be wearing. And this clarifies for staff how they keep themselves safe, because at the end of the day, we have to keep ourselves safe in order to provide care to mothers and babies. Just a word about birth partners, because I think this has been in the news recently. We know that having a trusted birth partner present during labour really makes a big difference to women, to the safety and their well-being. And at this point, people are getting concerned about it. This statement came from the RCOG and the RCM to really reiterate how important it is for women to have that support, and the fact that women might need to have their antenatal care without their partner present, but they should have their partner present during labour. However, if their partner has any sign of infection, then that partner needs to stay at home and isolate. And therefore, one of the important things is to advise women to have a backup plan and a backup birth partner to support them at that time. Okay. Again, students have been talked a lot about in the press, and some of them will be coming into practice and will need to be looked after and supervised, because even though they're working in the clinical area, they must be supervised. And there's various NMC regulations and discussion about this going on. So if you have any queries, just check the Nursing and Midwifery Council updates. And also, this is what the guidelines are. So in year 1, generally the students stay carrying on their studies. Year 2, they may work in the clinical area and have less theory. And in the 3rd year, the final 6 months of their last year, they have an option to move into clinical practice. And I'm aware a lot of students have taken that option and really want to help their midwifery colleagues, but also help and support women and their babies. These sort of recommendations that have been made by Health Education England, I think, cover midwives as well as students, having regular breaks, knowing where to go to get local support. And many trusts are setting up fantastic support systems for mental and physical support of midwives and students, having things like a wobble room, so people can go and just have some time out. If they need to have a cry, there's tissues. If they need to have a cup of tea, there's a cup of tea. It's really important, these physical things. And also making sure students have a safe induction into the new area, which we tend to do anyway, and be supported to raise any concerns they might have in that area. Really important. Okay. Have some thoughts about the midwife survival toolbox. I think my 2 colleagues are going to give you more than enough for your massive toolbox. But I think one of the most important things is we must be up to date with the information. The trouble with that is you get overwhelmed with it. If you're listening to the news, if you're looking at Twitter, and if you're talking COVID with your colleagues all the time, it can get very overwhelming. And again, I know Jenny and Sheena are going to give you some extra tools to cope with that. But making sure you've got NMC guidance at your fingertips, looking at the information from the RCM and the RCOG and Department of Health. They keep on putting out some fantastic information, and it's really useful to have access to that. Also, there's a good series of seminars on COVID-19 from the Royal Society of Medicine. There's also the Practising Midwife and All for Maternity Nurture Zone, which is a fabulous space to get information and support so you can look after yourself. Additionally, you need access to Ppe, and I know over the last couple of days, especially from listening to the Health Minister, this is being sorted out, and it's a matter of logistics, getting equipment to the right place. And if you haven't got the equipment, you need to make sure it's being reported to ASAP. Sorry, as soon as possible, using my slang. I've got the wobble rooms, having a quiet room, just somewhere you've got time out, and remembering it's okay not to be okay. This is out of the ordinary. This is unusual. This is really heavy duty stuff for all of us to cope with. At the end of it, we need to look after our nutrition. The difficulty when you're stressed is the thing you want is all the carbohydrates, the chocolate, the biscuits, and of course people are giving you things like that to keep you going. We'll have to think about losing weight later, I think, but keeping some exercise can be tremendously important. Having a strategy and maybe looking at coping calendar, taking each day as you can. Okay, now I'm just going to come to a little end there because I know you'll want to listen now to the 2 speakers, and I'm delighted Jenny Clarke's joined us. Jenny's the midwife, well known to many of you, I'm sure, as the skin-to-skin woman, the skin-to-skin midwife, and she's known as a leader in compassionate leadership. She's a leader in social media through Twitter, and she's so fantastic at sharing innovation and good practice. And of course, she is an NHS star. And I just need to remind you that if you're just joining us, you can still get this podcast through iTunes, Spotify, and all good podcast players. So, Jenny, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
Right, well, first of all, welcome everybody, and it's so lovely to be here with Sheena, Sue and Catherine, who's our keeper looking after us. I'd just like to say that kindness does start with yourself, because it is proven fact that if you are kind to yourself, and this is work that's been done by the King's Fund, if you're kind to yourself, you're more likely to be able to give kindness to others, because you need to fill up your own care, your own self-care. So with that, I'm going to move on to my next slide, which is a message of empathy from me, because it's very emotional for me to giving this talk, because first of all, I feel quite guilty that I'm not working at the moment. I retired a couple of years ago, but I have got quite bad asthma, so I'm not able to be in that situation. So I want to send my love and gratitude to all the people working during COVID. And there's people working who people don't really see. You know, there are nurses, midwives, student midwives working, doctors. And then there's the people in the background in the pack labs and the porters that people aren't thinking about. So I'd just like to say thank you to those people. And just to say as well, there's no right way to respond to this situation, because it's for everybody. And it's just that this is the connector. So everybody in the world has a commonality now. And I think that is showing that we're having some kind of connections through the communities. Today I've been on the road that I live on. The vicar, I live across the road from a church, and the vicar put some music on, quite loud music, and we all went out and danced outside our houses. And that's never happened ever, and I've lived here a long time. So that was lovely. Anyway, I just want you to know that I'm not here saying this is what you do. I'm trying to give you some empathy, and I want you to understand that I can't be in your shoes. But I have dealt with adversity and in emergency situations in the workplace. So I do have a small insight, albeit, you know, it is small, into how you might be feeling. And that's what this self-care talk of mine is about, really, is how I can help you to look after yourself a little bit more, so that you have more reserve, and so that you have more batteries, and so that you don't get burnt out, and so that you can keep giving, but also, first of all, give to yourself. So that's my key thing. So what is self-care really? Self-care is, I feel, it's reclaiming that part of yourself which might be lost in your working day, because when you're at work, and probably in this situation, it's go, go, go. Everybody's go. You might be on reduced breaks. You might be finding it difficult to get home on time. You might be starting work earlier. You will probably be stressed about the PPE situation, which I think is starting to resolve in some places. And in order to, you need to reclaim yourself so that you can renew and rejuvenate and give a better part of yourself to your family who are at home, or your friend who's at home with you. So any activities that you do to take care of yourself is preparation for a new day, and it's refueling. Things like exercising and relaxing. Some people find exercise very relaxing, some people don't. Some people like to do yoga or watch TV to relax, and anything is fine as long as you're getting your switch off moments, I think. So I just want to say, a quote that I found was, put yourself at the top of your to-do list every single day, and the rest will just fall into place, hopefully. But that is hard now, because everybody's feeling very emotional, and you do forget about yourself when you're emotional and worried. You think about others when you're a caring person. So emotional and spiritual care, it does help improve relationships and connections with others at work and at home if you look after yourself. It helps you to gain clarity in the current climate, and it deepens your relationship with yourself. So my suggestions are this, and I've tried these myself and they have worked. If you try journaling, now there is a brilliant midwife called Laura Godfrey Isaacs who does a lot of journaling with pregnant women, but she also does it for midwives. So just get the book and write down your feelings from each day, how you felt, and you can refer back to that a few days later. And also something that I did quite regularly when I was working was I used to record myself on my phone talking about what kind of shift I'd had and how I felt about that shift, whether it was happy, whether it was sad, whether it was stressful. And then listening to it later on after a few days, I thought, well, I got through that and I did really well. So I think it's about reflection. If you can reflect, sorry, my chest isn't great tonight, but it's my asthma. And read and listen back, that's a really helpful thing to do for yourself, because you might not have anybody at home you can break down to and explain what kind of stress you're being under at work. You might be living on your own, you might be living at work with the current situation, so you need some kind of way of feeding back. You can also send recorded WhatsApp messages to friends and and tell them how you're feeling, just so that they can get back to you. So that is self-care, telling people that you're struggling. It doesn't mean you have to be this brave spirit all the time, I don't think. So when you read and reflect back on these situations, you can then see how far you have come. And another tip from me is unplug your devices. And you're probably laughing at me saying that because I'm on Twitter a lot, but I have been good while this has been going on at not going on Twitter all the time, because the news is quite emotional, I think, for everybody. So try a wind down time with no news or no emails. And I think this constant access to emails that NHS staff seem to have now seems to put pressure on people with this. I need to look at the latest update. And it's not always a good thing, but I'll just have a quick drink. I think my chest is my asthma. I've had my inhalers, don't worry. Another advice of mine is to be in nature. I am lucky because I've got a dog and I can walk my dog. I walk in very early in the morning when nobody's out, and that really gives me a boost. Not everybody's got a dog, not everybody's got a garden, so you can do things like put a wildlife programme on and try and immerse yourself in that, or sit in your garden, or sit on your front doorstep. And another thing that I have done during all this is, because I'm going through changes in my life at the moment, which I won't go into because that's personal, but I've really decided that I have to keep a clear space in either a room or an area that I can relax in without distraction. So I've made myself this little box, which is on one of my slides, of nice things in the box that I can just lift out and think, right, I need my sanctuary box. So that has helped me. So that might be a suggestion to start your own little box, like perhaps with a candle in, not lit, a little blanket, and some books that you can refer to, a notepad and pen, and all these things will help you. I've also got my favourite perfume, Nina Ricci Lerton, which was my mum's perfume, and it's very emotional for me, that smell, because it's a switch off from things, and when I smell it I think of my mum. I also use lavender a lot, but I'll tell you what else is really good is frankincense is a great relaxer, and you can just put a couple of dabs on your uniform when you're at work and the smell will rise up, and it can be very calming, positive feeling smelling frankincense. I've got some frankincense in here, so it's a positive thing. So I'll move on to my next slide now, which is making your own midwifery self-care sanctuary box. So I just did this. I've got one already, but I added a few things to it today, and in it I've got things like, people might think this is weird, but it's a mindfulness colouring book, and one of the midwives, Sally Goodwin, bought me this, and it's really helpful because when you're colouring in, you don't think about other things, you focus on the lines or your colours and you switch off, and it's a positive thing. I've also got this worry egg, which was my mum's, so it's really old. It's like from the 70s. My mum died in the 70s. And it's really good to hold something like that, just to give you some kind of focus on thinking of something else instead of thinking about the COVID thing. I know we have to think about it, but sometimes you must have a switch off for yourself. So in here I've got little books. I know Sheena's got this book. This is a great book, Self-Care for the Real World, by Katia Narain Phillips and Nadia Narain, two sisters. And there's some really good tips in there about unplugging, about how to self-care, what you can do to make yourself feel better. It's all positive. And I treated myself to some new slippers the other day. Sheena will like those. So it's those just small things that will help you to get through your difficult day. I used to work with a midwife who used to take her slippers to work, and when it was a break, she went on a break and put her slippers on. So that made her think that was the end of my work at the moment, and I'm going into my rest mode. And then when she was going back into her work, she put her normal work shoes on. So it was a physical reminder for her that that was her time to relax and switch off. So I think that was a good thing. And, you know, look at things like, if you've got a photograph, keep a photograph in your box of somebody that you might not be able to see quite so often. And do try and make the most of things like FaceTime and messaging your friends and asking them how they are, because when you ask somebody how they are and they reply, I'm doing okay, how are you? That's also self-care. It's not, you know, self-care doesn't have to be just being intrinsic to yourself. It can be an extrinsic thing. Looking out for other people makes you feel good, but I'm not going to talk about that too much because I know that Sheena has got so much positive advice on that. So make the most of the light as well, because the light helps you with serotonin. And when you work in night shifts, that is a really difficult aspect of night shifts, is you don't get enough light. So you can do things at work that will help you to have more light and be positive about how you're getting through your shift. 1 minute, how many minutes, sorry? 2 minutes left. So if you can think about a space for yourself, my key points to think about are making a space for yourself, wherever that may be. It might just be in the corner of a room, or making yourself a sanctuary box so that you think, right, that is my box that I'm going to go to that will help me to get through difficult times. And it's got nice things in it that I can have. You might want to put some chocolate in there. I don't know. So there you go. That's my little advice to you. And also just to say that Margaret Howell, who does the hypnobirthing, has released, it's like a link to hypnosis to help people through this difficult time. And she's offering it free to NHS staff, which I think is lovely. Sheena alerted me about that today, so I just want to mention that because that is priceless. Margaret Howell's work is invaluable to us. So that's me for now, and thank you. And I'm going to let Sue lead on into Sheena, and thank you so much for listening. I hope I've helped you a little bit, if any, made a difference to your day.
I think that's wonderful, Jenny. Thank you so much. I don't know if the sound allows me there. Oh, something's gone. Sorry. Thank you so much for that, Jenny. That's really good. I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about what I was going to put in my little box. So that's going to be my homework after this session. And thank you so much. Now, to anyone who's listening, if you have any questions for Jenny, you can put them in and we can get to asking Jenny at the end of the session. Now, if you've just joined, this is the Maternity Midwifery Hour, supported by Matflix Video, streaming from the maternity experts. All your CPD needs made easy. And Matflix is the one-stop shop for anyone who wants to finish a project or do their revalidation. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sheena Byrom, who is known to many, many of you. Sheena Byrom, OBE. She joins us from Lancashire, and she's well known for her work in humanising childbirth, in providing consultation to maternity services, and supporting maternity services wherever she goes. She's fabulous in writing and her international work, and of course as director of All for Maternity. So welcome, Sheena. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue, and good evening, everybody. If you're in the United Kingdom, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And like Jenny, I feel very humbled that I'm not in practice at the moment. I'm actually in isolation because I've got an underlying condition. And so I'm helping from the back office, as it were. So I'm helping a lot of my colleagues in practice, but I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. So I'm just going to start my slides. And the first slide is just to demonstrate that this, as we've already heard, is a global pandemic. And what this photograph kind of conjures up for me is that we're in it together. The whole of the world is in it together. Major stresses. I don't think I've slept at all since this pandemic has ramped up. But what reassures me, or not reassures me, because it's not a positive thing, but it kind of like gives me some kind of, I don't know, some kind of feeling at the back of my head, is that we're in it together. And that's wonderful for me in a way, because one of the things I'm really keen on is looking after each other. It's my mantra in life, really, to make sure that after looking after ourselves, which Jenny's alluded to, is looking after each other. Because I think, like Jenny said, not only are there huge benefits to that, but it actually changes the world. And maybe this is a time for resetting. Even in the midst of this distressing time, it could be a time for us to think about the future, and I'm going to cover that in a moment. First of all, I want to thank you. Like Jenny said, we've got huge gratitude. The world has got a huge gratitude to healthcare workers everywhere, and other workers too. I appreciate that. But being in direct contact with sick and people that are using healthcare, actually you're putting yourselves forward for something completely different. And I just feel that, you know, my gratitude to you is never ending, and I am stood by your side, and all I can say is that you are the ones that are kind of making the world go round at the moment. So thank you so much from me and my family. Now, I'm just going to turn my attention to the fact that I've been hearing so many stories from my colleagues, so many distressing stories of midwives that are feeling burnt out, they're feeling anxious and worried, has already been mentioned. This is a wonderful image of two midwives looking after each other. Unfortunately, we can't do this anymore. This touch, this connection, because of social distancing, isn't possible. And this is something that I'm missing at the moment, not having hugs. And so, of course, when you're working in a situation where you probably need a hug or you need touch and it's not happening, how do we cope with that? How do we deal with it? And I'm just going to kind of give you a few suggestions, if that's all right with you. This slide I use all the time, and if you've heard me talk, you've probably seen it before, and I never take it out because it's kind of, for me, it's just the most fundamental thing, and it's about love, because we have to keep bringing ourselves back to this. The fact that maternity workers, healthcare workers, everyone that's looking after the sick or pregnant women that are having babies, they must have this feeling underlying. It's that makes them tick. It's that they go and do that extra mile because they've got that love for their job and that love for what they're doing. And I think, you know, over the past few weeks, we've seen how this love has risen up in many, many people. And so that's kind of where I want to base my talk on. The first, love, I've written it 3 times. The first one, actually, Jenny's covered. That's about loving yourself, and that's about the care that you give yourself, because you can't really give anything from an empty cup. The second one is about helping your colleagues and supporting your colleagues. And the third one is how we connect with women that we're caring for and families. So I'll just move on to, this is a slide taken from Michael West's work. Michael West works for the King's Fund, and he's a big advocate of compassionate leadership. And you may not think that you're leaders. So, you know, you might be thinking, oh, this is just for managers, but it isn't. This is about everybody, because actually in us all, we have leadership capabilities, and especially if you're midwives and student midwives, because you're actually leading women through woman-centered care. That's what you're doing. So let's think about this. This is everybody's responsibility. And what Michael West and his colleagues say is that actually we all need ABC. We need autonomy, so we need a voice and influence. We need the ability to make decisions. We need to support each other, because that gives us control. And when we have that autonomy and control, that helps us during the day. We can do that for others. We can help others to have that voice, to have that influence by our actions. And I've seen this in action. I've actually done it myself in practice, and I've seen others doing it too. Giving others that autonomy and that ability to think for themselves. We need to belong. We need to, all of us need to have a home team. And I loved it when I read about this home team, because it really conjured up this picture of kind of how we connect with others, how we support those who are maybe struggling, but also how we find our role models and we cling on to them them. What are they doing that's different? Even this week, I've found some role models, heads of midwifery, that are actually offering choice to women, and they're doing it courageously and in a way that's just made my heart sing. But finding your home team is very important, and we need to be loved and we need to be supported. And competence, so share learning, share when things are going right as well as when things aren't going so right. Try to reduce each other's workload by making each other a cup of tea or doing something to help each other. And I'm just going to move my little thing. Review meetings, reviewing. So having kind of tiny meetings during the day where you can review what's going on is really important. And that's kind of, there's a lot to talk about with that, really. So just to move my slides on. The next is taken from actually the Practising Midwife journal that me and my daughter own. This is the latest issue, and it's showing how we have to try really hard to establish relationships of equality and reciprocity, and that's sort of helping each other and looking at, not just the groups that we normally work with, but looking outside the box to the groups that we should be linking in with, the nurses, the doctors, and thinking about race and equality as well, so that we can practice in a way that's really congenial to the best situation. Social media is a huge advantage to us at the moment if we use it properly, because when we talk about social distancing, that doesn't mean we shouldn't connect. And both Jenny and I and Sue have found huge benefits from working with our peers and others, finding things that are going on outside our normal working space, normal group, to find that support and that encouragement. And we're working now with a global community. We're meeting online others who have actually had dealings with COVID, and they can help us to get through it by giving us some advice. So it's massive, and it's really worth thinking about Twitter and Instagram and Facebook to get that support, but use it wisely. And actually, Maeve O'Connell and colleagues have written a fantastic paper. I'm not sure whether you've read it, but we can put the link in the comments of the Facebook page, that actually now's the time for midwives to provide support for each other, social media. So they're reiterating this that I've just said, that actually now's the time to engage with it if you're not already doing so. So what about women? Do you know, when we think about the connection that we can have with women during labour and birth, and this is what you would class as a real humanised birth scene. But now, given the fact that all women have to be treated as though they've potentially got COVID, then we're going to be wearing masks and gowns, and that changes somehow this kind of picture. But it doesn't need to change the way we are with women. So we might look different, but there's things we can do so that it doesn't come between the connection and the relationship that we have with women. It's so important. It's more important now than it's ever been. So when you look at this image, it conjures up fear. And I know many, many midwives, I haven't mentioned the word fear yet, but that's what midwives are telling me, and doctors, that they're fearful for so many reasons. And this kind of scene might conjure up more fear for the women we're caring for. So what can we do about that? Well, actually, there's quite a lot. So this is an image of someone who's smiling. And I remember talking to a woman who actually had a full burqa on. She was of a Muslim religion, and she was covered up except for her eyes. And when she gave me feedback about the care she'd had, she said the thing that mattered to her was the eye contact, and how everybody looked. If somebody looked at her in the eye instead of looking away, that made a massive difference. So look at these eyes. Even though this person has got a mask on, we can see what's going on in her soul, the connection that she's having. Take a closer look. Look at the reflection. Think about the pupils. How can that affect the way that you care for somebody? When I was sick recently, when a nurse came up to me and looked me straight in the eye, that's the thing that made the difference to me. And when she smiled, it made me feel so much better. This is an example, and I'm sharing it with permission from Hayley Newnham of Downside Up. And this is her friend of hers who's actually in hospital at the moment, and he's given me permission to use it. He's actually a doctor, but he's suffering at the moment from COVID. He's been very seriously ill in intensive care unit. And and Hayley posts every day on his behalf to say how he is. And this is what he said. He said he wants everyone to know the peace of the ward, and he wants, sorry, I'm just going to have to try and find, I'm just going to read it. Can you see there? He wants everyone to know the peace of the ward and the serenity and preparedness of the staff who have learnt a new skill of spreading hope. Think of hope through their smiling eyes, the only part visible behind their protective clothing. And that's making a massive difference to him. And in Israel, this photograph was shared with me again by Hayley. What they're doing there is they're putting photographs of themselves hanging down or sticking on their PPE just to show their face. So how wonderful is that? We're learning new things all the time. And again, going back to Michael West's work, this is one of the things he says in his piece, which I know that you're going to have the link to, is that connection and compassion are certain, unchanging, and provide, just one second, unchanging and provide a safe refuge for the face of this onslaught on healthcare and care systems and our wider community. So that's saying that that's the thing that can keep us going, the compassion, because when we're compassionate to someone else, it comes back to us 100-fold. So this is the thing that can sustain us, how compassionate we are with ourselves, but also with our colleagues, and then with the people that we're caring for, the women and the birthing people. In our latest edition of the Practising Midwife, we've got a vision. This was actually produced before before it took over. But what we're showing is how we can look through the looking glass like Alice did and look to a future that's bright. We can actually redesign our future now. We can recreate, make it better. We've stopped. We've got chance to reconnect and think about the humanizing of childbirth. This is all about it, and it has to be done with kindness and compassion, and that's right from policy level right through to the connections we have with women and birthing people. So what I'd like you to take from my bit of the talk is the eyes. Think about the smiling eyes. If women and families can't see your full face, keep those eyes smiling, because those are the things that will help you to connect when women are afraid. And it will also bring back a smile that will help you to be less afraid too. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay, thank you so much, Sheena. That was really fantastic. And smiling, it's funny actually, because when you say smiling eyes, when you're talking to someone on the telephone, you can tell if they're smiling, can't you?
Yes, you can.
That's fabulous. Thank you. And now we have got some questions for us, and they're on my mobile phone at the moment, so I'm hoping I can translate them well for you. I have a question from Sky Rolf saying, how can midwives replenish their energy levels when trusts are cancelling annual leave? And she says that it's not the case with mine, where leave is being encouraged to refresh, but she obviously knows it's going on in other trusts.
Who would you like to answer? Shall I just start off?
I think you might be the person to answer that one.
Well, I guess that for Sky, hello, thank you for your question. I guess that there are individual trusts that have individual difficulties, and obviously we can't speak for all of them. It's not ideal at all. I know some of my colleagues have been asked to go in on their holidays. Some of them have been very happy to because they're able to, and some aren't. I think that it's all about pulling together and replenish it. If the midwife who's been asked to cancel her annual leave feels that she actually can't give without having that rest, then I don't think she should feel guilty to say, well, I can't at the moment because I actually don't feel able to do it. So it's having that courage and that lack of, so trying to cope with the feeling of guilt, I suppose, because I know there is a lot of individual guilt going on. But you can't go and care for others in such a dramatic way unless you feel sustained yourself. That's one of the things on Michael West's web. If you look on the King's Fund at this particular piece that's around COVID, he says absolutely leaders have got to recognise that. But you know how desperate sometimes the situation gets. I used to be a head of midwifery, and I can fully understand that stress of if your service is, I remember grappling around even before COVID, of course, and feeling really desperate that we had no staff. So I can see both sides of it, and I think both sides have to really come to an agreement as to the best way forward.
I could also actually imagine some midwives might feel they need to cancel their leave because they need to support their colleagues. And
Yes.
I guess that's part of our kind of makeup of trying to cope and trying to care for each other. But I think
might be, yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if Jenny wants to say something to this.
I think this relates to something that was on Twitter today about somebody had annual leave cancelled, and apparently this person had been working months and months and months and months and was getting burnt out and had annual leave cancelled. And I think it's really difficult for when we talk about giving women individualised care. I think it's important during COVID that we give staff individualised care instead of just grouping all staff together thinking everybody can cope. Some staff might not be able to keep working long days or 4 days together, 3 days together, because I've heard about some intensivists who are working 4 days on, 4 days off, 4 days on, and there's no mention of age. Age is no barrier apparently, and I just think sometimes, well, what about the ones who are in the 60s? Surely there should be some kind of individualised care for staff as well. I don't know because I'm not there, and it's I can understand because Sheena's got the experience of management.
Well, maybe that would be a good phrase to be having individualised care for staff. I think that sounds really good.
That includes the head of midwifery as well.
Absolutely so, because they're obviously under stress trying to make sure the service is running well. So that they have their own difficulties. Okay, I've got another question from Barbara Montani, and she says, I'm on annual leave and still getting 3 to 4 emails per day about opt-in paid placement program. If I unplug, I'm lost. I'm not sure about what that means, really.
Does it mean that she's still receiving? Perhaps this is a really good question, a good comment or a question.
Okay.
Because I know that Jenny and I were talking about this, receiving emails when you're off duty and being expected to read emails. Again, that's a kind of an organisational sort of issue where it might be in some departments that you're advised not to. I guess that's again up to Barbara to think about whether she opens them and just puts them to one side and tries to just does it once a day and looks at them so that she doesn't feel out of the loop. Because of course, if she is on annual leave and the thing is rapidly changing within universities, with the what's going on and the recommendations from the NMC, etc. But just kind of, maybe just do it once a day and then just don't think about it for the rest of the day. You have to manage that yourself. And I think that's something that in this day and age, we all try to deal with. It's a problem for me as well. Everybody's dealing with a lot of correspondence as well as social media. So, it's managing it really.
Yeah. And maybe not checking at midnight.
Exactly.
Checking your emails. You'll never sleep.
I do actually know Barbara. I've met Barbara and she's an amazing person and she's a senior student. And I wonder if she means the opt-in for the third years.
Yes.
Whether she's got anxiety about that during her annual leave. But I think she needs to respect her own self with her annual leave, really, because once she does opt in after her annual leave, then she won't be rested. So I think take your annual leave for now and just try and do some self-care. That's my advice.
Fabulous. Thank you. That's perfect. Okay, next question. I think this will be a good one from Despina Georgiou. How can we support women who wanted a home birth and really don't want to attend hospital? This is a good one.
That's for Sheena, I think, don't you?
Well, yeah, that's a very, very critical question for me at the moment. It's something that I'm hugely interested in. On the first kind of response to that question is that it's such a pity that home birth has been cancelled and birth centres are closed. I personally think that it's probably the wrong decision in most cases, but I do understand why some heads of midwifery have opted to do that. I think it's probably been in a rush, although I can't speak for everybody. I do think that we perhaps should have thought longer and harder about how to maintain birth in the community for women that want it. I do know that there are some services in the Midlands and in London and in Lancashire, actually, that are maintaining their services, which is absolutely brilliant. And very shortly, I'll be supplying a blog post that's got information about those services because they are exceptional. Now, on the other hand, if services have felt that they had to, for whatever reason, stop home birth and birth centre births, and obviously that, you know, that's been the decision that they've made for safety reasons, for whatever part of the safety agenda they've thought about, whether it's ambulance or staffing, then I think what we have to do is just think about how we can support that woman to have a home birth in hospital. And there are various individuals around the world who are really kind of doing this, mothers who are setting up groups, midwives who are doing it, but mainly mothers like Millie Hill, like Yvonne Miller, and like various others who are doing it. And basically, we can do that as midwives and student midwives. We can encourage women to utilise the things that they would have done at home. So taking things in with them, like their own covers, like their own music, like making sure that the person who's going in with them is within their circle of control. So, and that person knows exactly what they want. Having a birth plan, whether you call it birth plan or birth preferences, it doesn't really matter, but having written down what matters to you, but taking things with you from your home. And remember that at every single step of the way, the woman can make decisions. Help her to understand that she can think about it if something's offered to her. It's kind of a topic on its own. I'd love to do more on that, because I think we might be returning to this, Sheena, somehow. I think this might be something we need to repeat. And I think it's interesting what you're saying is about the control, because of course at the moment the control is taken away from all of us. So we all have to, midwives and women, try and work together to get some control. Yeah. I know we have quite a short time. I have some more questions. I have Samantha Savage from New Zealand. I'm a practicing LMC. How do you deal with all the different opinions on who should be wearing PPE? Oh, well, that's getting easier, because we've got guidance from organisation, particularly. I don't know about New Zealand, but in England we've just this is Public Health England though, and these questions come from New Zealand. But still, the World Health Organisation has very clear guidance. But if you want to have a look at the English website, then I think it's very, very, very fresh to yesterday or today. And there's some amazing infographics. I've just been sharing them on Instagram, just kind of very clearly saying who should and who shouldn't, and what kind of PPE should be wearing. So I mean, let's just think about it. There's going to be lots of opinions. There's a lot of false information out there. It's getting right to the core of the latest information, but it is changing on a daily basis. And we have to keep remembering that. So I suppose my answer is just keep looking out for the latest guidance. But if there isn't any in New Zealand, then look on Public Health England's website and the World Health Organisation, more importantly. Yeah,
because it has to be that people feel safe, whatever they're chosen to have.
Absolutely.
Now, we've had some questions about giving examples of how HOMs are being brave to support women with service provision, but I think, Sheena, you've actually answered that one. I've got a Prashant.
Shall I just quickly say a little bit more about that? Because I think it might be worth me saying.
4 minutes.
Yes, just that these heads of midwifery, what they're doing is they're utilising staff in a different way, and they're also utilising the ambulance service in a different way. And they've engaged with the ambulance service and worked out different ways of transfer, looking at transfers for emergency and transfers for non-emergency. But they're willing to share their guidance. They're all willing to share it, and I have got a lot of that guidance, and so we'll be doing some publication of it very, very soon.
Fabulous, thank you. I think we're running out of time. The time's gone so quickly. And Prashana from India, in Nepal, no hospitals are providing OPD services, and so women cannot go for regular follow-up. How do we care for these women? Well, I'm aware that. I perhaps should answer that. I'm aware that a lot of services now are trying to access women on such things like Zoom and Skype to reduce the contact down. I have to say some of these questions are fantastic. I'm very pressured because there's very little time. And we have Laura Henry, another question that's kind of linked. Do you think this is going to force maternity services to jump into digital care provision? Do you have any advice for student staff going from 100% paper to digital?
Can I just pick up on that? Because I
thought you might.
Sorry. It's okay, Jenny.
Me too.
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Well, I'm sorry. It's just that I just think connection with women. I forgot to mention that in my talk, actually, that if you can't have face-to-face contact, then this kind of connection is really important. And again, the smile, even when you're talking without face-to-face visuals, you can still do it. So I'm not sure about access to this kind of service in Nepal, but I know that in other areas it's happening, even in some other low-income countries, that it's happening where this has to be this telecommunication. And the second question, moving to digital, well, that was always the intention. And whilst there's things like Face Mums, which have proven to be absolutely amazing, so it's already moving in that direction. I think we're already seeing people like the Modern Midwife, for example, giving fantastic advice on Instagram. Jenny the M with Skin to Skin, we're already doing a lot of it, and I just think it probably will get more like that, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily one or the other. I think it'll always be both. We'll always need to be in direct contact with women. I don't like the term front line. I never use it. It sounds like a battlefield. It might feel like a battlefield at the moment, but it's army language, war zones. I don't like it. So we're always going to need to have that face-to-face contact, but picking up a phone and speaking like this, keeping that connection is absolutely vital. So it's that the connection is so important. And again, that's women when they're going in to have their babies must remember to take their battery packs with them so that they can stay connected to a doula or a relative that maybe the partner that's ill. Battery packs are the way forward.
And all I'd say is we can't lose the touch and the virtual hug, hug with women. I think I think what we'll try and do is answer these questions on the page, because we are reaching the end of the session. And I want to thank everyone for watching and for taking part. We've had some fabulous questions. Please do tell your friends about this program if you've enjoyed it. You can get this on demand through Matflix and through all your podcasts. And we will be back next week with new guests and new topics to help at this sort of time. And I'd like to thank so much Jenny the Midwife and Sheena Byrom. I should say Jenny the Midwife and Sheena the Midwife for being so fantastic and giving us so many ideas for looking after each other, looking after ourselves, and looking after women and babies. So thank you very much. All I would finish with is I have got is that if I share my screen, wherever it's gone, it's on here, I'm not as slick, is I think when we're through all this, we will need to mourn our lost people. We need to support our friends. And one of the things that someone said this week, and it was Rachel from Oxford, was you need to tell people what you think about them, what they mean to you at this point. And I think afterwards we can do that, but we need to do it now as well. Yeah. And that's when you sort of tell the people that are important to you that you love them, because you need to do that. And that meant a lot to me. And also I want to say that all these resources will be available on the Facebook page and on the page for you to access. And all of them have got lots of information and lots of resource for you. The beginning bits are mainly information, and the end bits, well, the middle bit, like all for maternity, is information and support. And then all of the ones at the end tend to have more well-being resources. So that will be available to you all. So I'd like to just say another big thank you to my guests, and thank you to everyone for coming. So,
thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue.
The Maternity and Midwifery Forum brings you Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. All your CPD and revalidation needs met in one place. Our expertly curated box sets are the perfect way to engage with the latest thinking, issue by issue. They make revalidation easy and are the perfect accompaniment to any project or university coursework. In addition to video from expert speakers across maternity and midwifery, there is easily accessible research and links to the latest government policy documents. Our reflective questions at the end are the perfect primer for your revalidation. In the same way the Maternity and Midwifery Forum provides certificates to show that you have attended these festivals, we can provide certificates for those who have consumed the content of a box set and submitted their written answers to the reflective questions provided by our curator, Dr. Jenny Hall. Midwives, maternity professionals and students, do not miss out. Subscribe to Matflix today. Box sets are £17.50 each, or access to them all starts at £6.99 per month. Students pay just £2.99 a month. Check out the box sets and subscribe today at www.matflix.co.uk.